Planning Commission, September 9th, 2020, special meeting, calling the meeting to order. And Commissioner Secretary, would you please conduct a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. We'll start with Commissioner Ablaza. He should be logging on. Commissioner Albana.
Present.
Vice Chair Alcorn.
Here.
Commissioner Belong.
Present.
Commissioner Chua.
Here.
Commissioner Chuan.
Here. Here.
Chair Tao.
Here, thank you.
Thank you.
And the next agenda item here is public forum. Those interested may address the Planning Commission in writing on any subject not on tonight's agenda. Commenters may type their name and city of residence for the record, and the remarks read aloud will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments submitted via online form will be read aloud by the secretary. As an item not listed on the agenda, no response is required from the city staff or the Planning Commission, and no action can be taken. Planning Commission, may instruct staff to place the item on a future meeting agenda. Commission Secretary, is there any public comments?
We have not received any public comment.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
And moving on to the new item, new business this evening, and that's a review and discussion of City Commission Handbook and Planning Commission bylaws. So staff, if you will.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. We're happy to be with you again tonight, and we don't have any development items before you, but we will have a quick discussion about the bylaws for the Planning Commission, and we'll also talk a little bit about the City Commission Handbook, which was just put out by which was approved by the council in 2018. So Jessica and I will be teaming up to do this. We'll try to make it as interesting as possible, but it's nearly impossible to make the bylaws very exciting or intriguing. So we'll go along. If you were able to tune into the Brown Act training by the city attorney a few weeks ago, he was very clever and did it with a top 10 list similar to David Letterman and made it a little more interesting. And I guess I thought about being clever and doing something similar, but unfortunately you just get the dry version tonight. We sometimes run out of time when we're putting things together. But we'll go ahead and start. I have just a few preliminary comments. There's actually three different, I think it was 3 different layers. Oh, Commissioner Chuan, please.
I'm sorry. This is to Chair Tao. One thing I wanted to make note on the agenda, are we supposed to do the Pledge of Allegiance? Because I noticed it wasn't on there, but I just want to know, is that something we should be doing?
Director Thomas, is there a formal obligation to do since it's not on the agenda, is there a formal obligation to do so?
I completely forgot, and I apologize for that. It's customary to start with all meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we've kind of jumped into the presentation, but we haven't gotten too far. So thank you, Commissioner Chuan, and at the wish of the chair, I think.
What about the public forum as well?
Yeah.
We did do that.
We did do that.
We need to close it though.
Oh, we should probably close it.
Okay, allow me to ask. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll back and on the public forum. And
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, there's no need to, at least there's no requirement that the public comment forum, that section doesn't need to be closed. We can just proceed.
Thank you, City Attorney. We appreciate it. And so going back to the pledge, Commissioner Chuan, would you be kind enough to lead us in the pledge?
Yeah. Please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I just want to know, can you guys hear me?
Yes, Commissioner Blaza, you're loud and clear.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so circling back to the under the new business section here, if I can return the floor back to Director Thomas.
Thank you very much. So as I was saying, we're going to talk about 3 different layers of kind of rules and regulations that govern the work of the Planning Commission. Won't spend too much on the first one. Actually comes from state law, and if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, I jumped ahead a little bit. I'll cover this slide first. So we talked about this probably 10, 12 months ago with some of our initial training with Barbara Nelson, some of the roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission. And I know that you know all of this, but I just wanted to reemphasize that really the primary duties of the Planning Commission that we're talking about tonight, and this kind of gives us the reason why we have rules and regulations around how you run your meetings and your commissioner conduct of meetings, that sort of thing. Above all, you know, the Planning Commission really serves at the pleasure of the City Council, and our duty as staff as well as Planning Commission is really to implement the council policies and priorities, and these are all expressed in the various documents that we deal with every time we meet. We talk about the general plan, and you know, if you have a development in front of you, usually the staff report will always include a table that outlines how that project is consistent or not consistent with the general plan. When you make findings, you know, we've had a couple of discussions around how projects either were or were not consistent with the policies of the general plan. And the good news is we bring, you know, later this month we'll be talking about the new general plan, and it has a lot more information in it than our current one, and it will make our jobs a lot easier because there's a lot more information to work with under the general plan. And then right under that, we have the 2 specific plans at present in Milpitas, the Midtown specific plan and the transit area specific plan, or what's now called the Metro plan. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then, of course, we always have another table in the staff report that deals with the zoning ordinance. And then most projects, or all projects, also have to be reviewed under CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act. A lot of the projects we bring before you are exempt from, for one reason or another, from CEQA review. Larger projects like the one we looked at last time, the Barber Lane project, it had what was called an addendum, or you know, an amendment to an environmental impact report that was done before. So all of that is under the purview of the Planning Commission. And then we have the kind of the meat and potatoes of the Planning Commission work is all of the development applications, the site development permits, the conditional use permits, and those sorts of things. And then when we have new development like the Robeson Homes project that came where there was a tentative map attached to that. Some of the projects down in the transit area, if they're the large buildings, we will have a tentative map that's for condo purposes. So, you know, I guess that just to round out the purview of the Planning Commission, anything related to land development and the health and welfare and well-being of the community. And just by way of background, I think it might be interesting to mention that the work of a Planning Commission has really only been around for about 90 to 100 years. Grew out of 100 years ago, right around the turn of the century, there was a push toward good government, and it was to address unsanitary conditions in urban environments. So in 1909, you had the first zoning ordinance that was enacted in Los Angeles. It wasn't comprehensive. It only addressed industrial uses and keeping those separate from residential uses for obvious reasons. New York City had the first comprehensive zoning ordinance around the same time. And then it was 1922, about 100 years ago, the Congress enacted what was called the Standard Zoning Enabling Act, and that gave states the right to enact zoning. And then right after California statewide in 1928 enacted what was called the Standard Act, and that requires a general plan in all cities and counties. So the work's been ongoing for about 100 years. We've got a lot to work with. Milpitas has always had the commission working under the council and providing recommendations on development. So that's just kind of some of the background and the roles and responsibilities. But if we could go to the next slide, please. As I was saying, we kind of work under 3 layers of rules. So, the planning, even though the city has 12 different commissions, we'll talk about those in a minute. The Planning Commission, in my opinion, kind of is a little, sets apart from the others. It's the one commission that is actually required or mentioned in state law. The law says that the legislative body, in this case the city council, may create one or more planning commissions, each of which shall report directly to the council, and they shall specify, and they'll have numbers, and they act in the public interest for all of the things that we just talked about. So we're set up under state law. That's Title 7, Section 65101 in state law calls for a planning commission. Now, some cities, the council can act as the planning commission, but I think virtually all cities and counties in California have that as a separate function. So, and then we go down to the next layer. We have the Milpitas Municipal Code, and the Planning Commission is the one commission that has its own chapter in the Municipal Code. And some of the things that it covers are mentioned here for duties and powers. So it talks about, you know, how many members in the Planning Commission and what the qualifications are. It's interesting that there isn't a long list of qualifications for the Planning Commission. I guess as a matter of practice, the city council generally looks for someone obviously of good character and someone who's involved in the community and knows a little bit about land development. The best commissions that I've worked with always have a mix of backgrounds. Usually a lot of people come from real estate, as we have here, or with an architecture background. Sometimes they deal with other community groups, with the school district, or with you know, an HOA. A lot of times people will come to the Planning Commission. And so those are some of the qualifications. The one specific qualification in Milpitas is that you have to be a registered voter. And that's always checked by the city clerk. And you'd be surprised at how many people get disqualified for not being a registered voter. Hopefully that's, most people nowadays are wanting to get registered. The municipal code also covers appointments. You know, who does the appointments, how long, when are they made? You know, our terms of office here in Milpitas are for 3 years. That's a little unusual in my experience. Most commissioners serve, they say, coterminous with their with the person who appointed them. In some cities, each council member is able to appoint 1 or 2 members, and then there's some at-large members. Here in Milpitas, the municipal code gives all of that responsibility to the mayor. He appoints the commissioners, and then they're approved by the council. And our mayor has been has enabled or has asked for, he wants to have shared governance. So he's allowed some of the council members to propose to him who they would like to appoint, and then they go through the process there. But so that's all of that is governed by the municipal code. And then also there's a lot of overlap between these different layers. So the municipal code talks a little bit about organization of the Planning Commission and the officers. And then of course that's also covered by your bylaws. And so we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that when we get to the bylaws. I kind of think of these different layers, you know, state law kind of sets up the foundation, and then you have the municipal code that gives it a little bit more structure and a framework. And then the bylaws are a lot more detailed and very specific to the municipal code, or excuse me, to the Planning Commission. The municipal code empowers the Planning Commission to adopt its own rules, and that means the bylaws. We'll talk about that in a moment. It talks about how many meetings are held and how the records are kept, that we have a recording secretary, that there are official minutes. And it's interesting, a couple weeks ago, we had an issue that came up, and there was some public comment made, and question was raised about a discussion in the Planning Commission back in 1976, 1980 timeframe. And we had to go into the microfiche, and we looked up those records, and it's really, it was actually enlightening to me, actually almost in an eerie kind of way, that a lot of the things they were talking about clear back in 1980 were exactly the same things we're talking about now, maybe a little different vein. But I was surprised to see they were talking about housing affordability, and you know, and that was at the beginning of some discussions around BART coming into Milpitas. And it was just really, it was actually very interesting to me. There was a lot of similarities, and protecting the hillsides, and you know, developing business and economic development was all really important there too. Then the municipal code again covers duties and powers, and then the planning commission, I believe, is the only commission in the city that is compensated for the work that you do, and that's actually written right into the municipal code. So if and when we're able to address that, we would have to take an amendment to the council for changes to compensation. I don't know, I think with the item tonight, we only included copies of the bylaws and a copy of the commission's handbook, but I did want to give you a little overview of the municipal code. So we can just see if there's anything else. I don't think there's anything there. Next item, please. So then we get to the handbook, and the handbook has an interesting history. This was adopted right around the time that I came on board at the city, and it's my understanding that the city clerk and some of the other directors got together and they identified a need probably under the council's direction and from the city manager, that they needed a little more consistency among the 12 commissions at the city. And at the time, I think there might have even been 14 commissions. So one of the things they looked at that time, again, this has just been a couple of years ago, is they reorganized some of the commissions. I know economic development became economic development and trade. I think there was a separate sister cities commission that was dissolved, and their duties were absorbed into other commissions. But the 12 commissions that we have now, and again, this was set up with the handbook, or the art, and some of these you'll notice have a little bit of overlap with the planning commission. So we have the arts commission. So some of the work that you do when these projects come forward and there's a condition of approval that they have to pay a certain art fee, that money is when it's spent on artwork, public artwork for the city, it goes through the arts commission. There's a community advisory committee. I think that's just general on anything related to the community that doesn't fit under what, maybe we could say, that doesn't fit under one of the other committees or commissions. We have economic development and trade, energy and environmental sustainability. So there's some overlap there again with planning. Library and education, the Parks and Recreation and Cultural Resources Commission, our planning commission, public safety and emergency preparedness. There's a senior advisory committee and a youth advisory committee, science, technology and innovation, and veterans. So that covers a variety of different topics, and you can probably guess which one of those, I should say for each one of those, there's a certain city department that is responsible as the liaison. So the commissioner's handbook sets up kind of the rule, which department handles which of the commissions. And then in addition to the commissions, I noticed I won't go through all of them, but if you look at the city's website under the government tab, you'll see a number of ad hoc task forces. And some of these had to do with campaign finance reform. A few years ago, there was a task force on that. There's been one on housing. I think there's been one on homelessness and those sorts of things. So as things come up, the council will appoint different task forces and committees. And those are separate, I should add, from the council committees that are then made up of one or two, or usually two council members that work under their subcommittees of the council. And those are separate from these task forces. So again, the commissioner's handbook talks about roles of the council, the commissions and staff. They also talk about appointments in terms of service for each of the commissions. This is one of those areas where the handbook was put together so that there was a little more consistency and standardized rules around who served on what commission and how long they could serve. And if you've served three, for example, if you've served 3 consecutive terms on one of the commissions, then they ask you to sit out for a term, or you can serve on one of the other commissions. So I guess the good news there is there's plenty of opportunities to serve in the community under any one of those topics. And then it's the handbook that actually gives a little more direction on the bylaws. One of the attachments to this handbook, you may have noticed if you looked at the attachment for tonight's meeting, there's a standard set of bylaws, or a template for the commission bylaws, so that each commission, some of the rules are kind of set, and the bylaws can be customized to each commission. And we'll look at yours in just a moment. You'll see some of the areas where yours may be different than another commission. Then there was also a desire to standardize sort of attendance and participation in meetings. And then the handbook also calls for an annual work plan and a budget that's presented to the council. And that's usually done around this time of the year. I've been poking through my files, getting ready for tonight. I saw the work plan and the budget for last year. So we'll be bringing that forward to you probably in a month or two. The Planning Commission work plan is pretty much always the same, though. We look at the general plan. In this case, we'll be adopting the general plan by the end of the year. And we're doing some work on the specific plans. You're involved in that. And then we just talk about development review and the work that you do on development review. Last year, we included the training that we've been doing with Barbara Nelson. This year, I don't know, when we talk about bylaws, maybe we'll talk a little bit about work plan and if there's anything else you want to include in that. So if we have the next slide, please. A couple of other things that are in that handbook are, it mentions that the council will hold an annual recognition. Usually it's a luncheon. We had one planned this year in June again, but it was canceled for COVID. So I'm sure when we're back to a little bit more normalcy, we'll be having some type of a recognition event. The council likes to do that to express its appreciation to all the people who are serving on commissions. Some of the commissions require, I don't know if they require it, but they do fundraising. If they're like I was looking at the library and education, for example, they might do fundraising, something related to the school or to the library. I think the youth advisory committee or the senior advisory committee, if they have some type of a project that they're doing, they may do fundraising. That there's certain sections of this handbook that don't necessarily apply to the Planning Commission, but they're across the board. Similar to the bylaws, the Commissioner's Handbook also has a rather general section on ethics and standards of performance. There, you may have noticed that it's mostly made up of links to resources like from the League of California Governments and others that have put out standards of performance for commissions and appointed bodies in the city. And of course, the Brown Act is mentioned. In addition to the Brown Act, the city has its own open government ordinance that was adopted back in 2005. It's kind of an extension of the Brown Act. And then there's a whole section on parliamentary procedures. A lot of that is for new commissioners so that when they come on board, they can read through and familiarize themselves with that. And then of course, our favorite annual activity, submitting the Form 700, talks about conflict of interest. So you kind of see that a lot of this Commissioner's Handbook is more general items just for anyone serving in a voluntary or a service function in the government, in local government. So then we go to the next slide. Les, I don't know if we want to, I'm afraid of making it too long and worry. We can stop after each one of these if you want. If you have any questions on the handbook in particular before we jump into the bylaws, or we can wait until the end and then just talk about everything in general. But any so far so good.
If I may just kind of like stop in sections, so this way that the materials probably be more relevant to the questions.
Okay.
So, like to solicit commissioners, any questions for staff or for planning director? I don't see any raised hands on the screen here. So I have a couple of questions for the director, if I may. First of all, circling back to the handbook on page 5 of the document. In the middle here, I think it's the third paragraph down. So basically, it's once per year the commissioners will vote and elect a chair and vice chair. So that the responsibilities would include, it just noted as regular meetings here. So I would assume that also includes special meetings or as appropriate.
That's correct. Yeah. And when we get into the bylaws talk a little bit more about the different types of meetings. And like tonight, I hope it didn't cause too much confusion. Sometimes when we have a special meeting like this, and it's just a matter of starting earlier, but we actually have to cancel the standard meeting, the regular meeting, and then have a separate notice for the special meeting. That's just because we're starting at a different time.
Okay. On the same section there, it's noted no commissioner shall serve more than 3 years as a chair or vice chair on any of the commissions. Has that rule been sort of standard followed by the commissions, or is this a new rule that's implemented into the handbook?
You know, I noticed that one too. It stuck out to me, and I was kind of surprised to see. I guess it makes sense. I think I don't know whether it was added when this handbook was adopted. It's common practice that maybe the chair will serve 2, in this case 3 terms. The idea there is it's very similar to how you have a term limit of 3. You can serve 3 consecutive terms and then serve one off. The idea is just to allow more opportunity for people to serve in different roles.
So basically, the 3 years is within 1 term, or is it for the entire appointed, however long the total appointment terms are? I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Okay, so on that follow up on that particular question there, serving 3 years in the chair or the vice chair position, is that for the 1 term, or is that for the entire term that you were participating in that commission? Yeah, I read it as though you could. So if you were elected as the chair, you could be elected chair 3 consecutive times, and then probably you would. I would apply the same principle. Then you would probably sit out 1, and then if the body wanted to elect you again, they could do that afterward. But they just didn't want to. I think they don't want someone to serve as the chair for, say, 9 years. If you filled 3 terms on the commission and you served as chair the entire time, you could. The potential is you could serve 9 years as the chair. I think after 3 consecutive, they'd like to have someone else take absolutely rotation. Certainly appreciate the point. And going down to page 8, this is on the absences and attendance. So states if any commissioners is absent from 3 or more meetings in a year. I assume that the reference here on the absent is on the unexcused absences versus excused. We've gone back and forth on that. Liz may be able to shed a little more light on it. It's hard to put you on the spot, Liz, but we actually send a report to the city clerk's office. Do we do that on a monthly basis, Liz?
Yeah,
I know
we do it on a monthly basis.
And it shows whether there's an excused or unexcused absence. But I think, didn't we get the determination from the clerk that it was any absence, whether it's excused or unexcused?
That's correct. We got clarification this past year. I want to say when the most recent commissioner handbook came out, and it's either present, absent, the meeting was canceled, there's no meeting, or resigned. So it's either you're absent and you're present. There's no excused or unexcused absences. Okay, very well. Thank you very much for the explanation. And that's all of my questions. Commissioners, any questions? Since I cannot see you on the screen, so if you will raise hands, I would appreciate it. Okay, seeing none, with Director Thomas.
Yeah, just continuing on that same page where we were just talking, I noticed this, another thing that caught my eye here, and this was interesting because the handbook again is written for a general audience, but there was one specific mention of the Planning Commission, and it's right at the top of page 9, and it's under participation in the 2nd paragraph. It says, some commissions expect participation by commissioners outside of the regular meetings. For example, planning commissioners may attend the annual Planners Institute offered by the League of California Cities. And then it talks about other events. I thought it was interesting that it didn't mention, I know many of you, if not all of you, also participate outside of the regular meetings when you're contacted by developers or applicants, and they want to talk to you about their plans ahead of time. And I think, given the type of work that you do and the complexity of some of these projects, it's probably, I don't know, hopefully you have all found that helpful in either, sometimes, we typically meet with the chair and the vice chair before every meeting to go over everything. And that's always open to any planning commissioner as well. If you'd like to do that one-on-one, we're happy to do that. But in particular, I just thought, I don't know, I just wanted to acknowledge that I know most of you, if not all of you, spend a fair amount of time outside of the planning commission meetings in your role as planning commissioner as well. It's one of the reasons when we talk about compensation, we did a review a few years ago of all the neighboring jurisdictions, and different cities do things differently. I was surprised to find that most planning commissions are not compensated for their work. I know when I served as a planning commissioner in Nevada, we were paid for each of the meetings that we attended, and it looked like most of the larger cities in South Bay region pay at least a small stipend similar to what Milpitas pays. Some pay a little bit more, some pay less, but I think again, that just underscores the amount of time that you put into your commission work. It's a very regular commission. I think most commissions in the city try to meet at least monthly, but not all of them do. And you're meeting at least twice a month, and sometimes we sneak in a special meeting as well, and then all of these additional outside meetings that you have with developers. So it is quite a bit of work. Hopefully I haven't heard any complaints, so I hope that all of you are enjoying the work that you do on the planning commission.
I guess we'll formally adopt a strike platform at this point. Thank you.
So I'm just looking down, yeah, and then here's I'm looking at the Commission's handbook now. It's page 10, has all of those links that I mentioned for ethics and expected standards of performance. Most of it is, please show up on time and participate in the meetings. But this ties directly in with what I was just talking about, and having these we'll call them ex parte meetings with or outside of our regular meetings, when you have discussions or meetings with the developers. That's very helpful. But I appreciate that our commission always, as we should and as we've been trained to do, we always have a disclosure at the beginning of the meeting. It's not necessarily a conflict of interest, but it's always just good for transparency to let the public know when those types of conversations have gone on. And then I think we also talked about in our training with Barbara Nelson about disclosing those, and it's just good practice, or I think it's almost expected that never make a commitment in one of those types of scenarios. The decision on any matter needs to be done by the commission as a whole. So it's always good to hear and hear more about a project and learn more about it, but that's not the time or place to be making a commitment on something, just to keep you safe and the city safe. So I think that's all I had on that one. Really commissioner conduct. Oh, well, we're going to get to that in a moment with bylaws. The bylaws talk in a lot more detail about commissioner conduct. So if we could go, maybe we've already gone on to the next slide. Yeah, so on the bylaws, actually, if we could go back the slide on the bylaws. There's just one slide on the bylaws. Jess is going to help me a little bit with this one. But just to let you know that our current set of bylaws were updated or adopted by the council in 2019. So they're relatively new. And as you look at the bylaws, I might pull those up here. If you look at your attachments in your packet, this is the second attachment. So you go through the handbook, and then there's a bunch of attachments to that, and then you'll get to the bylaws June 2019. So you can see in the table of contents that it's pretty straightforward document. There's a preface, and then we talk about the duties, the meetings, the meeting agendas, minutes. Really, the meat of these bylaws is in the meeting conduct. Well, actually, it's in the commissioner conduct, the meeting, and we'll talk about the difference between the meeting conduct and commissioner conduct. So, I don't know, Jessica and I didn't really practice this too much, but do you want to talk a little bit about some of these, Jessica, or I can continue?
I'm happy to. That way you can take a break and drink some water, and we'll jump into the next stimulating portion of this discussion, which is the bylaws themselves. So I think as Ned alluded to, they're very straightforward. And in the previous version of the bylaws that we were able to amend and clean up quite a bit, had a lot of outdated language in it. Some, just things that really didn't make sense anymore. And a lot of that was really looking at commissioner conduct and just some of those things that were either redundant, they were in the municipal code, they were in the handbook, and it just wasn't necessary to have them in the bylaws as well. One thing that we're trying to do is streamline and keep the bylaws as succinct as possible. And if any changes are made, most likely we would like to make them to the municipal code, and the bylaws can just refer to them so that we're not constantly trying to update both and keep them in alignment with each other. But there is a little bit of overlap, as you've seen. And the nice thing about the handbook is that it also covers some of these in a general sense. But with the Planning Commission bylaws, there's just a little bit more specificity to it. So, in the first couple of pages, they really spend a lot of time talking about the role of the officers, the role of the chair and the vice chair, the role of the secretary, making sure that Liz Medina, our administrative assistant, is able to record all the meeting minutes and perform her duties throughout the Planning Commission meetings. Then it just jumps right into the next section talking about meetings themselves. And Ned has discussed this a little bit, but really kind of the idea of we have a regular meeting. Ideally, we have them twice a month. There's always the possibility that we may not need a second meeting, but generally speaking, it's expected that the Planning Commission meets monthly. We meet at 7 o'clock at City Hall, or now throughout COVID, we're going to be meeting virtually. And then it jumps into the concept of special meetings, which is exactly what this meeting has been. And that also alluded to that, we needed to cancel the regular meeting, get approval to move on with a special meeting so that we could have it at a different time. And it does have different requirements. It allows a little bit more flexibility in order to post a special meeting. And those could be for urgent topics or things that, that need to be addressed immediately. So you have a little bit less of a notice period that needs to be adhered to. However, we do consider special meetings to be, on an as-needed basis and not the standard to the norm. So that's a good thing. I know we've definitely been utilizing special meetings in the past year. We've had a lot of things come up. So we always appreciate the flexibility of the Planning Commission to let us conduct those and to keep the business of the city moving efficiently. Then we also have a lot of other meetings, and that's detailed in the bylaws. So for example, when the city attorney held the ethics training, that was, another meeting, but it wasn't necessarily something that we needed to convene the entire Planning Commission and do a public notice for. You were allowed to attend that without it being a Brown Act violation. So that was really good. And some of these other meetings don't necessarily require a Planning Commission action, which is nice. It could just be for informational purposes and just informing you of what's going on in general. And we also alluded to this a little bit with respect to attendance and punctuality. And, I just really want to commend this Planning Commission. You're really, really good about showing up on time. You're engaged, you've read your materials. We've been really fortunate to work with such a really great group. And, if there are ever situations where we have circumstances where commissioners aren't able to make the meeting, it happens. We're all human. This concept of really an absence is an absence is because the expectation is that you have a really important role and you need to be here. You need to read your materials. You need to come prepared. You need to ask the planners questions if you have questions. And in general, if you have those absences, try to minimize those to less than 3 a year. And again, it's up to the council's discretion if they want to do anything, if they're concerned about your attendance. Goes into the concept of the quorum, and then just jumps into agendas and minutes, which again, these are not terribly difficult concepts for you to understand. And again, since you've been meeting and successfully conducting these hearings for quite a while, and especially for our new planning commissioners, it's good to know that we've kind of fallen into a great kind of schedule with when we deliver materials to you, when we're able to get the agenda out, distribute the packet, and then what is within that agenda in terms of just the content itself. So you can read through that. If you want me to read it, I'm happy to, but if you feel comfortable going through those items, again, it's not too terribly complicated, but really the idea is if there's something that a commissioner would like to do to add an item onto a future commission meeting, they're welcome to make that request. We can also, and this has really happened more often in city council hearings, where we may have a council person that is asking if they can, if staff can go back and try to do a little bit of research on a particular topic. And then it enables and allows the staff to provide the council with how much time it's going to take to prepare those materials. They may need a little bit more time than the next council hearing. And I think the same thing applies to the Planning Commission. If we need a little bit of time to prepare the materials for you, we will let you know and request an appropriate amount of time so that we can be prepared and we can give you the material that you need.
Oh, Jessica, can I butt in for just
Of course.
Well, I just wanted to mention here, since we're talking about the packets and the reports. So Jessica and I are now working where we want to focus with our planners over the next 6 months or so on really, on the writing in our staff reports and in preparation of those. We still have a little budget left in our contract with Barbara Nelson. So rather than doing training with the Planning Commission, where another part of her scope of work was to work with our staff, and based on her long experience in a variety of different cities across California and working with planning commissions, we may revamp our staff reports a little bit. Sometimes they get a little bit repetitive, and we just want to make those as good as we can. The staff reports really have a number of different purposes. Obviously, in our interaction with the Planning Commission, it's to inform you the best we can of our analysis of the project. All the things I talked about at the beginning. Is it consistent with the general plan, with the zoning? What does it look like? And we want in the best way that we can through words and also with illustrations to give you a really good overview of what that project is and how it fits in with the goals and vision that the city council and the policies that the city council has laid out. But then the staff report also serves another purpose for us as staff. A lot of times if we have a project and maybe years later when all of us are gone, somebody may need to know something about that project. We go back in the records all the time and, well, what did they say? What did the staff report say? And what were they talking about? What were the issues on that project? So it really becomes a record of what that project was about. Sometimes we have a project that might be similar to one that was reviewed and approved before, and we want to know why and how they talked about it. And then the other purpose, of course, it's a legal document, and it's a document for the community to also understand what the project is about. So the staff report is really important, but we never want them to be too long and too wordy or too flowery. I think one of my most common comments on draft staff reports I get from staff is, this is a staff report. This is technical writing. This is not a brochure for selling real estate in Hawaii. Take out the flowery language. So unfortunately they may get a little bit dry, but we just want them to be as clear and concise as possible when they get to you. Hopefully they're fulfilling that that responsibility that we have to you and giving you information. I don't know if there's anything more about that you'd like to add, Jessica. Sorry to interject there.
Not at all. I guess the only thing I would add to that is, we are committed to getting the Planning Commission the meeting materials as soon as we possibly can. We want to make sure that commissioners have enough time to review the materials. We know that some of these projects are very complicated, and we also recognize you all have jobs, you all have other responsibilities, you have families. You have other commitments with your time. And so I definitely want to put out there, we recognize that at times the packet comes out later than we would like. We are also equally committed to working with our staff to make sure that the materials are prepared early enough and that Ned, myself, and the city attorney have a chance to review the materials and get it out to you as soon as we possibly can. I know that there have been times when we haven't been able to get it to you soon. as soon as we would like. And we recognize that that's a goal that we're trying to do better. And if you ever have any questions, again, as you're reading those materials, please reach out to us. That's what we're here for, and we want to answer those questions and help resolve any conflicts that you may have as you review.
Well, and let me tell you, Liz Medina is a miracle worker. We get things to her at the last minute, and she gets that packet whipped up and out the door as quickly. So she really keeps us on task as well. We appreciate all of her. I know you see her all the time in doing the minutes and sitting in the meetings, but she's working feverishly behind the scenes to make sure those packets get out on time and make sure that we do our job well. Thanks, Liz.
Yes, thank you, Liz.
So, Director and Ms. Garner, if you don't mind, go ahead and just entertain if the commissioners have any questions to this point with regards to bylaws, so we can kind of probably put this presentation in the chunks. So, commissioners, any questions? If you can just go ahead and either speak up or raise your hand virtually, so I can see your raised hand. Anyone has any comments? Okay, seeing none. If I can just inquire with the city attorney on the bylaw, section 3.05 on the quorum. Basically, I think that the language here, I just want to clarify for all our purposes. In the event there's a lack of quorum, it referenced here. Shall be chosen, a disqualified commissioner shall be chosen by a draw of straws until a quorum is reached. So if the city attorney can or staff can enlighten us on the sort of the technical aspect of that.
Yeah, sure, Chair. I'm just taking a look at the bylaw now. So
this is on page 4 of the bylaws, 3.05 under quorum.
Yeah, so this pertains to, it looks like when a commissioner has to abstain due to a conflict of interest. So say there are, all 7 of you are present, or let's just say there's, and if, 3 have a conflict of interest, generally that means with a conflict of interest, for purposes of a quorum, the conflicted member is not counted as part of that quorum. So the votes the body would actually not be sufficient to make a vote. So this bylaw provides that there's a rule of necessity in which disqualified commissioners, they can draw straws, so they can actually, that rule allows one of the commissioners to participate when otherwise they would not be allowed to.
So in other words, by the simple act of drawing the straws and a commissioner, disqualified commissioner will be requalified for that particular item only, correct?
That's correct. Just to count, just to compose the body, to constitute a quorum. So normally, if a commissioner has a financial conflict of interest, for example, he abstains, steps out of the room. But in the event that it comes to the point where there is not enough there's not enough commissioners to make a vote, then one of those commissioners can make the body of 4, which is what's required to have a quorum.
Okay, and so that the person making a judgment will be the city attorney or staff.
I haven't been with this commission. I'm not sure how staff has done this in the past. I would think it's probably a combination of both, but procedurally, yeah.
I know this commission here has been very good in terms of attendance, and I've been on the previous commission, and there was a couple times I think it was the staff was calling ahead of time, making sure there's a quorum. So just want to double check on that end. Okay, and also on the section 4.01 on agenda and prep. So in terms of, the noting in the bylaw itself of 9 days and 5 days. So the 5 days is counting we generally speaking have it posted by Friday. So that is counted as even though it's Friday midday or later in the day, is that still counted as one full day, or how's the counting done for that purpose? Either Director Thomas or Ms. Garner.
I would say if we're looking at that full 72 hours, that also includes the weekend. But our hope is that we can get out the packet materials and the agenda to you on Thursday evening. I can tell you that Liz Medina tries very, very hard to get us to be able to do that. And sometimes it's just impossible for us to pull everything together in that amount of time. But, if we're able to get it to you by, noon on a Friday, then that would give us adequate time to get us to the Wednesday hearing.
Sure. I want to make sure we're in compliance with the bylaw, sort of the 5 days, and I'm more interested in knowing how the 5 days are counted versus, when the actual getting materials.
Yeah, and it says ideally distributed no less than 5 days prior. So I'm going to say we're leaning heavily on the ideally. I'm an idealist. I try to get it out that soon as well. But, we recognize in a perfect scenario, it would be best to get you that information, I would say by Thursday night, and then you would have a full, the 2.5 days of, up until the Planning Commission hearing the next week, plus the weekend and Friday to review it. But by Friday, I think we're getting as close as we can to the mark, and we are always striving to hit that ideal.
And I don't recall a time when we may have missed, or the latest that had gone out would be on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
If that ever happens, I think we can also, if we have one item that's holding everything up, we can always send everything out ahead of time to keep it on Friday, and then we'll follow up as soon as we can with that final item. Sometimes we just have, things that beyond our control.
That's right.
Yeah, that will come in at the last minute, or something that we want to resolve. And it's definitely one of those cases where we wouldn't want to send out something that we know is inaccurate, so we might hold it back until we've nailed down whatever issue has come up.
Absolutely, I think that's great. So, if in the event there's a hold up, we'll release the portion which is ready, and then we'll supplement it with the remainder portion. That'd be wonderful. Thank you. And the commissioners, any comments? Hearing none. So, Steph, sorry for the brief interruption there, and please.
That's okay. Ned, would you like to jump in for meeting conduct, or?
Sure. I was just going to say that was actually a really good place to break that up, because up until now, a lot of everything that we've covered about officer selection meetings, it's really kind of boilerplate for all of the commissions at the city. Pretty much have these same rules in place, and I think Planning Commission is a little different in that you do have more special meetings or other meetings, but as far as attendance and quorum, all of that is pretty much standardized across all of the commissions. So not much change needed there. Now, when we get into with your agendas and minutes, again, they become very much legal documents. That one of the reasons that the Planning Commission is covered under state law and also in the municipal code is that some of the decisions you're making, all of the decisions you're making are legal decisions. And if we need to, city attorney can say more about that. But it's really important that we follow a strict agenda, that the minutes are kept, and that everything is done in a certain order. And so for that, we go into the next section, which is section 5 on meeting conduct. And again, it lays out the purpose of the Planning Commission that we talked about. We generally follow Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure. A lot of the work that you do is with a public hearing. Some of the things that we've talked about with Barbara as far as addressing the commission and being professional in how we talk to one another. But this section on meeting conduct also goes into detail about how you make motions, how we do the vote, what is a supermajority vote, what do we do in case of a tie vote. We had a case of that in the past year. It was kind of a lack of a majority vote, and then abstentions. One of the things I noticed that caught my eye was that, and I think this question has come up in a couple of our meetings, is when you abstain from an action, the bylaws actually do, there's a sentence right at the end, a planning commissioner abstaining from voting shall state a reason. So in your other votes, whether yay or nay for an item, you don't necessarily have to state a reason, but if you're abstaining, the bylaws do require you to state that reason. And then there's, if they talk about passing the gavel, and we've had a couple of instances recently where the chair abstained and passed the gavel to the vice chair for that item and then came back. Interestingly, the seating arrangement is here in meeting conduct, and this says to encourage the integration of recently appointed commissioners, a meeting seating arrangement shall be established by the chair. So that's one of the prerogatives of the chair, is they get to decide who sits where when we're on a dais. We haven't had to worry about that for the past 6 months, but when we're back in the chambers, we'll talk to the chair about how we want to seat people. And then it also has the order of procedure and the hearing guidelines. And this is something that we talked about, I think, even maybe with the previous chair, and we made a little bit of a modification, and this might be one area that the commission will want to talk about tonight. You know, I think that our meetings go along just fine. We always do the staff report first, and then have questions to staff, and then the applicant's able to give a presentation, and then questions to the applicant. And sometimes I know we've modified that where we would have one presentation from staff, and then the applicant might say a few words or give a question, and then you just have one round of questions. And I think that's something that the commission might want to talk about. You know, what works the best, and maybe what we're doing is just fine. And then there's always the public comment. We close the chair closes the public hearing, then a response to any questions or comments, and then the commissioners deliberate or discuss the item and then vote. And that pretty much is the procedure we follow in every meeting. And then it talks about reports. So again, this part, it's kind of customized to the Planning Commission. I'm not aware of other city commissions that have to have other city commissions, I'm not aware that they do public hearings or need an order of procedure. So that's something that's specific to you. I don't know, maybe Chair, are there any questions around that particular section? The meat of tonight, I think, has really been around commissioner conduct, which is the next section. But before we jump into that, any discussion around meetings and how they're run? Or
commissioners, questions, comments? Looking for someone to speak. Anyone? Okay, seeing none. If I can request that staff just kind of do a clarification on section 5.07, where it's denoting supermajority vote. So we have 7 members, and then it determines as an affirmative vote of 4 of the 7 votes. It's been considered a supermajority. Wouldn't that be a simple majority because you're just past the 50% mark? So can I request a clarification on that?
Yeah, and I might need some assistance from the city attorney, but these supermajority votes, I think the reason it refers to a supermajority is it can't be just a simple majority. If you only have 5 members, you can't say, well, it's a majority if you get 3 votes. It's actually requiring 4 votes. If 2 people have abstained and you only have 5 members there, or you happen to only have 5 members attending the meeting that night, you would still require the 4 affirmative votes to pass that action. And I believe that applies to certain types of items that come before you. In particular, I think it applies to a general plan amendment. And if the city attorney, if there's some additional detail there that you could add.
Yeah, that's correct. Like certain decisions require the state law normally says it's a 4/5 vote. So I think in this case, which would qualify as a supermajority. But I think because this is a body of 7 planning commissioners, I'm actually not Yeah, does staff know why this is a 4? This would still be a 4 with a 7-body planning commission?
I think it's just acknowledging that there are 7 members of the commission, but
Yeah.
even anything above, if, as I was saying, if there's only 5 members in attendance, it still has to be 4 votes. It's not like a majority on a sliding scale.
Right. I agree. Yeah, I think that's just, the term is super majority, and it's the statute refers to it as a 4/5 vote. So yeah.
So the items that which required the supermajority vote, as reference, is what something like a general plan amendment and any other particulars that will require such.
Chair, if I can jump in really quick, this was actually my only experience with the supermajority vote was with the city council, and that particular item was on placing the cannabis tax on the ballot, and that was back in, I think it was in 2018 or 2018, and it required a supermajority vote, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't recall if there were any others that I've ever seen, and I don't recall if we've ever had that issue with the Planning Commission.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're always stay between the 2 white lines.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I just want to say we'll always check. I know with the city council, like urgency ordinance, for example, those require a 4/5 vote. So a lot of decisions with the planning commission, if there are a recommendation, then I think just with the general plan amendments, but we'll always verify those things when the votes come up.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate it.
Chair, there's one other item here that's right above that under voting that I thought was interesting too. It says that the vote of all planning commissioners, including the chair, shall be recorded and no vote shall be taken in secret, and that's a given. And then the next part, all planning commissioners shall vote on an item when legally able to do so. So you either have to vote yay, nay, or abstain. You can't just remain silent. And then the next part was interesting too. Nothing herein shall preclude the planning commission from meeting or taking action in closed session in accordance with the requirements of the Brown Act. So we rarely, if ever, have anything that goes to closed session. I know the council meets in closed session because they have to speak about legal issues in front of the city, and sometimes it's contract negotiations and whatnot. But and Martin, unless you've had an experience like that, I can't think of any item that would require the planning commission to meet in a closed session, but according to the bylaws, they're not precluded from doing so.
Yeah, I haven't experienced planning commission ever going into closed session. I have been asked that question. It seems like it, you can, but based on what is allowed at closed session, there are no really statutory grounds for a planning commission to go into closed session. Like there is no pending litigation or things like that that would be discussed, but I think that's just sort of a placeholder in case that there is some outstanding or issue that needs to be discussed away from the public. It looks like it is permitted, but I've never had to call closed session for planning commission, no.
Would there ever be a case if the planning commission had something before it was a controversial item and the commissioners either individually or collectively had a question for you as the city attorney advising them, where they could go into closed session to have that discussion around legal issues, or prior to taking their vote? But if there were some type of legal jeopardy to the city by the vote that they're about to take, that they could discuss that with you in closed session and then come back and do their vote?
I think those would be one of the grounds. I think typically when it's in that situation, a recess would be called, and then I could confer, with the chair individually, that or the chair or another commissioner, 3 of us. But yeah, again, with closed sessions, I'm not familiar with because normally those would have to be agendized. Closed session has to be agendized. It has to be announced, and then following the closed session, then I have to make an announcement of what is legally permissible for me to say. So typically I think this would be done through a recess, and then we would just confer then.
Right. And then the other one that did happen to us back in, I think, December, it was under section 5.08 around the tie vote. And I remember on that particular item, I believe the chair at the time had abstained from the item. And so we had 6 commissioners on the dais and the vote came down to 3-3. And it was a little bit tricky because I had not read this section and I was not familiar with this section of the bylaws, but this is where the bylaws become our friend, because it's very clear in here that you know, a lack of a majority occurs when less than half the votes cast support the motion. But if it says if it's a tie vote, then that it's actually, I think it goes on to say, it's very clear in here, a lack of a majority vote occur. Oh, I already did that. Oh, that's what I said. When either, this is right in the middle, when either a tie vote or a lack of a majority vote occurs, the motion fails, thereby resulting in no action. So it doesn't necessarily, like a tie vote doesn't necessarily mean that you have voted down the item. It just means that the motion failed. And so then, as we did at that meeting, we went on to see if there was another motion or there was a change to the motion that could be made that would then sway one or more of the votes in another direction. And that's eventually what happened in that particular meeting.
Yeah, that's correct. Like a tie vote, you would just have to see it as it results in no action. So yeah, the options for the commission would be either to, you know, consider another motion where it could get a vote that is not a tie vote, or say a commissioner is absent. It's not the full 7 commissioners there. You can continue the hearing until you have a full body, and that normally would break the tie.
And I like the language here in the bylaws. It says at the end of that paragraph, in all cases, the Planning Commission shall work toward formulating a majority recommendation. If this cannot be achieved, in other words, if you can't get to a majority recommendation, the Planning Commission shall clearly summarize their issues to provide direction to the applicant or to the City Council. So a lot of it's a little easier if it's an item that's a recommendation to the City Council. Then we as staff would just summarize your discussion in the report that we provide to the council. It's a little more tricky when it's something that is a decision that you're making, like on a conditional use permit. If for whatever reason you couldn't reach a majority, then I guess we would go back and taking into consideration your comments at that meeting and work with the applicant to see if changes could be made to win a majority. But that's what we're always working toward, and why the deliberation portion of your meeting is actually probably the most important part, if there is a difference of opinion, so that you can get toward a majority vote.
So Director Thomas, if I were to jump in at the discussion here, so if there's a 3-3 tie vote, and given there's only 6 voting members on the dais, or in the Zoom, if the chair does not call for another vote, then does the chair have a prerogative to not call for another vote?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I might have to. Martin, do you have or City Attorney, do you have a opinion on that?
Oh, so you mean, just to clarify, you're saying you would not entertain another motion? It's a tie vote, and then you're not gonna have another consideration of a motion?
Correct. Just hypothetically speaking. So if the chair elects not to seek another motion, and number one, is that legal? Number 2, here, does the chair have the prerogative under the governing documents? And 3, if the council can elaborate on that.
Well, I think per the language of the bylaws, it says that the commission shall work towards formulating a majority recommendation. So I think the chair, based on that language, would have to at least make an effort to entertain other motions that could achieve majority. And then following again the language of the bylaws, if still that cannot be achieved, then I think, yeah, we would have to default to summarizing why, we were not able to reach any action for this particular item.
Okay, and with that, as a quote unquote a failed motion, the applicant's rights at that point essentially is appeal to council for a council hearing, correct?
That would be my understanding. Yeah, if there was no decision or the action, I think that would still constitute an action that could be appealed. The appellant could say that there was no, that the action of not taking any action constituted something that could be appealed to the council to make a decision. Yes.
Thank you.
Great. And
Planning Director, the floor is yours.
all right, so we'll continue then with section 6 on commissioner conduct. And this is the longest section of the bylaws, and it covers not only conduct and meeting preparation, but also, again, roles of the staff and the commission. Talks a little bit about Brown Act and Code of Ethics. But some of the things that I found interesting in here as I was looking over it, and not to go into every section, but I think our commission does this very well, is, everything goes through the chair. And so the chair directs the meeting, and when you're having deliberation or questions, then it makes it easy when we're on the dais, because you have a little button that you push and the light goes on, and then the chair recognizes you. But even if you have questions for staff or for the city attorney, all of that should go through the chair as well. And I think we've been very fortunate to have our at least during the time that I've been in the city, we've had the two chairs, Chair Mondal and Chair Tao, and they're very good at running the meetings, and everyone is very respectful, and that's very much appreciated, because it just sets the tone, the professional tone of the meetings and the importance of the decisions that you're making. But section 3 is kind of interesting about appropriate remarks. It says that a commissioner should confine remarks to the merits of the pending question. All statements should have bearing on the adoption of the immediately pending question. So we're focused in on we go through each agenda item, and we just focus on that item. Commissioners should refrain from offensive remarks directed toward another commissioner or staff. Thankfully, I think we all get along really well, and we haven't had to worry about that. And then commissioners should not read lengthy passages from reports or books or quotations without permission of the commission. And I think that's kind of that was an interesting one to me. It reminded me, if you've ever seen the movie of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or actually maybe it was Citizen Kane, and the one where they have the long filibuster in Congress, and the guy, famously congressmen will read recipes or their mother's journal, whatever it is. So obviously we don't have that kind of thing at the Planning Commission, but I thought it was interesting that it had to be stated in the bylaws to kind of keep things concise and focused on the matter at hand. And then also the next section, we haven't had to deal with this too much. I think maybe one time since I've been at the city, about when to withdraw a motion, that when the maker of a motion who no longer supports his or her motion should ask permission to withdraw the motion, and the maker of the motion may vote against the motion but cannot speak against it. So that's kind of interesting too. So if you were the one making the motion, you can actually vote against your own motion, but you're not allowed to speak against that. That was kind of interesting to me. And then the other items, kind of courtesy to others. There's a section here about ex parte. Two that have come up, I think they come up the most, at least with staff questions, are ex parte communication and communications with the press. And I just thought I'd mention on this really quickly that as stated clearly here, I can't state it any better, commissioners are discouraged from suggesting any change to a project to the applicant or staff before the commission as a whole considers the project. And we as staff always try to ensure that commissioners receive the same information relative to a project before you get it. So what that means is if we receive a question from one commissioner or another, and we do some additional research on it and we respond to that question, we will always send the response to the entire body of the commission, so that you all have the same information at the same time. And then, as it mentioned here, any such communication should be disclosed by the commissioner at the meeting prior to the item being considered. again, our commissioners have been really good about disclosing their ex parte communications. And I know most of you, or not all of you, will call Liz and have things put onto your calendar so that we're aware when you're meeting with developers. And that's really to protect you as well as the city, and to have anyone from coming back and saying that you were biased one way or the other. Everybody knows, it's just that basic rule of transparency in government. And then I think the other one, communication with the press, is really important. I know from time to time, if we have a project like La Quinta Hotel is a good example, there was a lot of controversy in the community and things were swirling around. And I'm sure all of you may have been contacted by a member of the press, either a lot of times it's the printed press locally, or it could even be, Mercury News or News Channel. I think the rule here, when speaking to the press, clearly state that you're speaking for yourself and not as a commission as a whole. So when you vote as a whole. You can speak individually, but make sure that it's your own opinion. And then I think it's also really important that if you're doing something outside of commission work, kind of depends on the situation, and you might want to consult with the city attorney beforehand, but in most cases, it's not appropriate to identify yourselves as a member of the Planning Commission, because it infers that you're doing that as that the commission as a whole supports what you're doing. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Martin, as far as, again, the idea is just to protect each individual commissioner as well as the city and the commission as a whole, and making sure that your vote is maintaining the integrity of your vote.
Yeah, sure. Are you talking about like when you're off site and you're in the capacity as a planning commissioner, or is that what you were talking about? Or
this is more specific to the press, and I think there might be a difference when you're talking to the press before a decision is made and then after a decision is made. And I think commissioners will be contacted both ways. So if it's before a decision is made, I think it's really important that they state that this is their opinion based as an individual. Now, after the matter has been, the meeting has been held and the matter has been determined, and the press contacts you, it's kind of like being on a jury. You might want to say what the deliberation was and why you voted the way you did, or I think that's okay too. But is there a difference there? And is there anything that the commissioners should be careful about when they're talking to the press?
Yeah, I think prior to a decision, I think it's important to make clear if you're going to make any sort of statement or have communications, that you want to make clear that you're not speaking for the entire commission. So even if somehow you are in the capacity of a commissioner, remember that the decisions have to be made by the body as a whole. So like at that point, you would want to clarify that you're not speaking for others. You're just speaking in your capacity as an individual commissioner.
And then we had one item, this was a while ago, it didn't involve any of the current commissioners, but the commissioner had been invited to speak outside of the city at a conference that was completely unrelated to anything pertaining to the Planning Commission or to the city of Milpitas for that matter. And there was some discussion around whether or not that person should use their title as a planning commissioner and identify themselves. And that gets kind of hard. It's a little bit tricky because you do serve as a planning commissioner for the city of Milpitas, and it in a way it does raise the profile of the city if you're identified as a planning commissioner. And I would say that's the case if it was a planning conference or League of California Cities or something that was directly related to the work that you do. But in this case, it was more of a social organization, and it didn't have anything to do with the work of the city. So in the end, it was determined that it was not appropriate to use planning commission title for that type of work. And have you had any experience like similar to that, city attorney, or any advice on that?
Yeah, I think generally it's not advisable because I think there's always the risk that you're speaking for the city, you're speaking for the commission once you interject your title in there. But it's a question of a lot of, there's conflicts, ethics, there's certain lines that it really depends on sort of the circumstance that you're in.
So I think as a general rule, if it's within the city of Milpitas and among people that know you're a planning commissioner, certainly if you're like talking to the Chamber of Commerce or I don't know, Rotary Club or school district, whatever it is, and it's something pertaining to city business. And I think it's okay to use your commissioner title, but again, if it's something outside of the city and completely unrelated to city business, that might be a case where you would not want to, it wouldn't be appropriate to use your commissioner title. The rest of these are some section about training and meeting preparation.
Through the chair, I have a quick question.
Vice Chair, please.
So I do know that San Jose has a rule for their planning commissioners that they, unless they are in like their official planning commissioner role, as in like they're meeting with a developer or they're in a meeting, they are, it's not just not appropriate, they are not allowed to use their title. And the big one that they talk about a lot is if they are going to be like a reference on a job application, they are not allowed to put that they are a planning commissioner. Does that same rule apply here for something like that? I'm just curious.
I have seen a lot of issues like you point out, Vice Chair. I think there's like, if someone would ask for a letter of recommendation and then the city council member asks, like, do they put their title as city council member? A lot of times that's, in my experience, I think that is discouraged. So I would say that the San Jose policy is probably consistent with what we should be following.
Okay.
I think that's definitely on the safe side.
Yeah. And when they're on the safe side.
But in general, as Ned was pointing out, I think in certain functions, if it's related to city business, I mean, there's times when you can't really avoid, saying, using your title. But I think, a lot of the times that gets complicated once you step out of that realm.
So here's an even more interesting question related to that. And it's quite topical because we are in campaign season. When giving an endorsement to somebody, because sometimes if you're active in the community, you're widely known in the community and people ask you for endorsements and such, when they list that they have your endorsement, a lot of the times what people do is they say, oh, so and so, and what's their what are they? They're like a Milpitas planning commissioner or something, and they'll put it under like a community leaders thing, like section of that. And a lot of the time we're not referring to ourselves. It's just that's what they're putting on their website or whatever. I realized that was on a campaign website, my name, and I didn't know about it, but it was there, and I didn't see it as a big deal. But is that something that's also kind of discouraged against the rules or whatever in that area?
I mean, I think I'd have to look more into that issue. I mean, I think the same principles apply, but I think particularly with election season, there's a lot of things going on that have to do with endorsements or even public comments. What can the body say or allow during public comments? So it's a whole host of issues that, I mean, I can look further into that for you if you'd like.
Yeah, if you could and get back to me over email, that would be really helpful. Actually, I would like to know where the gray area ends and where the red zone begins there.
Okay, sure.
I think
Thank you very much.
I've seen it done both ways, where usually if they put their name on the endorsement, it might just be their name, and as you alluded to, people just happen to know that they serve on this or that commission. I think that's probably the safer way to do it. But I've also seen it done the other way as well. It'll list their name and then comma, and then it will give their title after it, and it lends it obviously lends a little bit of credence to their endorsement if that's what they've done. But yeah. Big curious to find out what the city attorney's office finds on that.
And for instance, I have a Facebook, and it's a public page, but I don't have my name on there is not Vice Chair Alcorn. It's just Timothy Alcorn, and it states the city I'm at. So I don't call myself there, but anyone who follows me on there, they know what I'm doing. And sometimes I talk about our meetings, but I don't say it. I don't talk about anything as the planning commission or even as the vice chair. I talk about it from me. It's me. It's my name. And so I try and err on the safe side with that, because I know social media can cause some drama sometimes with things that go on. But I'm very curious, because a lot of the time, if I were to give an endorsement to somebody, they put it on their website as this, or as something. And if it's breaking a rule, I didn't put it on their website, but I'm wondering, like, should I be contacting them to like change it? And if they don't, like, it just seems like if it's out of my hands, then it's out of my hands,
And this was one area, I thank you for bringing this up. It's one area that's sort of almost glaringly missing from the bylaws, is any mention of social media. And it's probably because it wasn't contemplated when these bylaws were initially put together. And I thought about, suggesting, that's one area we could look at. I do want to mention that the city recently hired a new public information officer. And I know that the city manager's office is in the process of putting together a group to put together a social media policy for the city. It's an item that's on the council's work list. And so that will be coming, I would assume that will be coming forward very soon. So we may want to hold off and wait to see what that social policy reads. If we need to, at that point, once we have the citywide policy, we can then have a discussion similar to tonight's and come back, and we may want to incorporate that into the bylaws. That either would happen that way, or it may happen by fiat if the council, in considering that policy, which will be adopted by the council, they may direct that it be added into all of the commission bylaws, as they're ultimately the ones who determine what the bylaws state. So just to give you a little bit of background, something that's in the works of the city. Definitely needed. Martin, are you aware, are other some of the other cities that you work with, I think it's kind of a thing now that cities are coming up with social media policies.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of issues a lot of other cities have had to put that, because there's issues when, someone is an official or a staff member is going to post something on Facebook or those kinds of things. And whether it's going to be a limited public forum, how do we want to control all of that? So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it becomes kind of tricky.
Well, thanks. That was my question. Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Chua?
Vice Chair Dan. Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair Tao. I have the same issue, that situation as Vice Chair Alcorn, because this morning I just saw, I gave my endorsement to someone not in this city, but another city. And then I was looking at her website, and she listed me under community leaders. And then Evelyn Chua, something about serving as, I think, I have to look back, but it's the same thing as Vice Chair Alcorn, just at Milpitas, what is it? Milpitas Planning Commissioner. Same situation, I think. But it's under community leaders. So if you find out the attorney, can you please send the same email to me?
Yes, I'll do that.
And I have the last question. If somebody asks you as a planning commissioner, what have you done? Can I say it like with my one vote? How do I say it? I don't want to say it for the whole commission, but I want to say it like with my one vote. I'm looking for guidance here.
I think that would be appropriate. I think if you spoke in a general way about the work of the Planning Commission and in making recommendations to the council and dealing with land use issues, and then always reminding them that I'm one of seven, I'm one of 7 planning commissioners, so I just have 1 vote. But and I think it's appropriate to say that we generally work together toward a consensus on these items because we're all working toward the betterment of the community.
Okay, so I'm gonna do it like prefix it with my 1 vote, because I want to make sure I'm not talking the whole group. I'm just talking about my vote. That would be suffice, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I, in your situation, Commissioner Chu, I think it's appropriate because you do, these are public meetings and there is a record, and so you do have a record that anyone can look at, and so I think it's good in a general way if you say, as a member of the Planning Commission, I have 1 vote, but these are the items that I have always been supportive of, and I think it's appropriate always to give credit to the body as a whole, where because most, thankfully, most of the decisions that you make are unanimous decisions.
Right.
And that's where staff always, we always try to do the heavy lifting up front to make sure that everything is covered, so that when items get to you, they're not too controversial. Sometimes we can't avoid that because there's difference of opinions, and I'm not suggesting that you always vote together the same way, but hopefully I always tell the planners that if we're doing our jobs well, that we will have resolved a lot of the issues before they get to the Planning Commission, so that you're able to focus in on any of the remaining issues that need your
you guys always have. It's always, sometimes I don't have any more questions because it's so clean. I go, what do I do? Okay, so I'll do that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And
I have a question.
Commissioner Albana?
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to maybe direct this to the city attorney or also planning director. See, so I'm a broker and I'm trying to now get into my marketing plan of talking to developers, because we have a lot of developers that are building, selling condos and townhomes. And one of my things is to build and to reinvent myself into working with developers for buyers to help them own a home. So I'm doing extensive working with them. Now, for example, I am able to sell a couple, not just a couple, like a block of units for these new developers. I feel I'm working now against, in a way, am I limiting myself now? Like, if it comes to a project that they are going to be involved in the city, then does that, when it comes to voting for their project, then I will have to excuse myself because I'm involved with them and I receive some commissions from them?
Just generally, a lot of conflict of interest issues. They're very, very fact intensive. So when those issues do come up, you do need to let me know or let our office know, because those are things that could require your recusal. But just for purposes, we just want to make sure that we're keeping the discussion just based on our review of the bylaws as agendized. But that would be my response. I think I can't answer for sure whether that would be a conflict, but definitely if it's going to implicate a developer or an applicant, that is applying to the city and you have some relationship with them, that's something that we should be looking at. Yes.
And of course, which I have to disclose, right? Is there a time limit? Let's say I did business with them last year, like on a commercial property, I did business with them last year, and then this year, let's say early part next year, they have a project. So I still have to disclose that, right?
Again, it's all fact intensive. So it depends on the time. It depends on if you've received any compensation. It depends on, the applicant. There's a lot of factors. So that's something that we would have to discuss. And then at that point, prior to you hearing the item or prior to the commission considering the item, you would either have to recuse or you could be allowed to participate. So
I see. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, commissioners, any other comments? Okay. Chair has just one comment here. In my profession in commercial real estate, I oftentimes run across folks outside the boundaries of the city. there will be sort of discussing Milpitas items. For those who don't know me, I always once the name of the city comes up, I always want to just let them and recuse myself in declaring the facts and recusing myself from further discussion, so not to prejudice anything going forward, for them or against them, for their benefit. So so in that instance, there the disclosure is completely for the purpose of disclosure, and so not to prejudice anyone who's not previously acknowledged. And so if I also have a couple of questions, on staff with regards to on this particular section here of the bylaw here. We have discussed previously about number of items with regards to the conduct, in the electronic devices usage, and also the procedures and process in terms of from departing from a meeting, if it's premature to the adjournment, and some of these items. So we have discussed briefly on the dais, when we're still on the dais, about possibly forming a subcommittee, sort of looking at some of the items of which we may want to go ahead, add to or abide by the rules and regulations. Any commissioners may have comments, and staff, please.
Well, through the chair, as I was mentioning, I think one item that is glaringly missing from the bylaws now is social media, and we may want to have a policy. We'd want that to align with the cities. We could have a discussion around use of technology on the dais or during the meetings. And then the other one that you mentioned too, meeting attendance, or when if the meeting is going long, is it okay to get up and leave the meeting? I did notice in the bylaws that it was that last point was kind of covered. I can't remember, had to do with meeting attendance and just being present in the meeting. It kind of talks about it, it's not very specific, so we could look at that section and maybe expand upon it a little bit. But I think to your bigger point, if we could continue that discussion, if you wanted to form a subcommittee, we could take a look at some of those issues and further discuss them over a meeting or two, and then come back to the commission with any recommendations, and then ultimately for a follow-up discussion, and ultimately any recommendations that you would want to make as a commission would go to the council.
Absolutely, and I think from my personal perspective is, possibly forming a subcommittee for a duration of X number of months, so that we have a work product that which we can finalize on, and then possibly go with the support of staff, would go to council with to add into our bylaws. So, Vice Chair and Commissioners, do you have any comments on that point?
Would it make sense to possibly wait until their social media policies come out? Because, with a lot of that, I feel like a social media policy might actually include use of devices on the dais. And a planning director, through the chair, do we know what kind of timeline? Are we looking at it's going to be landing next year, 2 years from now, next month? Do we have any sort of idea on when that will be coming to the council?
Oh, thank you. The new public information officer just came on board, I think last week or the week before. So I would say certainly not in the next month, but I would say it's likely maybe certainly within the next year, but maybe even within the next 6 months. during that time, we could meet once or twice just to kick around some ideas. And I'm, you know, as we're talking, I'm thinking that some of the ideas that we come up with, I could then package up and give those to the city manager's office, letting them know that here are some ideas that are coming from the Planning Commission on this particular topic. And that actually might help that effort. I'm not sure who is going to put together the social media policy, but any ideas that we have can certainly be shared with them.
And Chair Tao, if I can suggest, there's always the possibility of you creating some interim policies that you could really place on the agenda of, you know, every commission hearing that really outlines, you know, the social media policy that the Planning Commission may want to go ahead and enforce now. It may not be officially recorded in the bylaws or in the commission handbook, but I think it could certainly maybe quell some concerns or anxiety that the Planning Commission has with respect to using social media. That way, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to, I mean, we can at this time start to figure out when that policy is going to be coming out from the city. But instead of trying to get ahead of it, you could just create your own interim strategy that is just not codified.
That actually was my next question, is could we create an interim policy if we see the need to do that? Could we create an interim policy, maybe have it expire January 2021 and then have, you know, decide to renew it, or have it go indefinitely until we vote as a commission to repeal it because there's an official policy or something like that. So that being said, I do like the idea of meeting a couple times and kind of, you know, trying to hash that out a bit. Because I feel like right now the gates are open. Anything could happen.
And I think this is a question directed to the city attorney. So this is essentially a self-imposed set of rules, and which the Planning Commission adopts to I guess govern itself. So can that set of policies be sunsetted? You know, upon such time the City Council has adopted a similar codified rules and regulations.
Well, I guess I want to preface my answer with the when the 2019 bylaws were adopted. This is for staff. Did the Planning Commission, did they have any input in those bylaws, and then were they forwarded to the council for approval, or was it just delegated by the council?
We brought those to the Planning Commission ahead of time and reviewed them and then took them on, and with a recommendation to the council. Okay.
I think, because generally I think it would be fine and actually advisable for the commission to come up with its own set of sort of informal policies that it could use in the interim. I just want to point out that, you know, our code section, it does say that the Planning Commission has the authority to adopt written rules and regulations, you know, and shall adopt such rules as it deems necessary to conduct its own business. And then it does say in the end, upon adoption or amendment, such rules and regulations shall be submitted to the council for review. So the only wrinkle there is that we want to sort of toe the line that, you know, we're not, you know, like when does the policy become a rule or regulation that needs to be reviewed and adopted by the council? I think generally though, like if we have a code of conduct, that those things would be fine. Or as chair and vice chair pointed out, just having some sort of a policy with social media. But I think we would need to look further into that, you know, depending on what policies we want to be implementing informally.
I feel like we could look at that in a subcommittee as well. Like, what can we do? And then once we figure out what we can do, what should we do?
I'm seeking the commissioner opinions. Any opinions and comments on that point? If we were to formulate a subcommittee, I think the maximum of 3 members. So this way we don't have a Brown Act issue, quorum issues. But at the same time, we can have probably the most diversified opinions that we may achieve a sort of balanced set of rules for ourselves. Anyone please comment. Vice Chair, do you have any comments that I can?
Well, I mean, I'm in support of that. I think I've made that clear tonight. You know, I'm not saying that we should definitely, you know, put policies in place. Nothing's happened. You know, it's not a reactive thing. It's a proactive thing. Like, let's take a look. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can improve. You know, obviously there's been a need that's been spotted by the city to put together a social media policy. I think it would be responsible of us to be proactive and kind of, you know, maybe set some informal guidelines in place or an informal policy in place until that day comes. But I think it'd be very responsible of us to take a look at first what can we do legally, and then after we figure out what we can do, what we should do, maybe come to a subcommittee and then take what we come up with in a subcommittee to the Planning Commission and vote on it as a whole. And I assume all these subcommittee meetings are streamed and public records. So if any of the commissioners want to know what's going on, they can always take a look. And so can the public. But I think that'd be a very responsible thing for us to do. And there's no guarantees that we'll even come to anything. We might be, you know, like, hey, I think what we have right now is solid. But at least we can say that we did our due diligence and we went and we were proactive and tried to improve.
Chair Tao, I
Please.
do not mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to let you know that I just received an email from Mike Liu, who's our IS director.
Sure.
And he basically sent a message letting us know that the social media policy they're working to get consensus from the unions and then going to council either next Tuesday or the following meeting. So it's actually much more quickly than we had been anticipating.
Jessica, we lost you.
You were breaking up over the last probably about 5 seconds. So the last word I heard was the social media policy, and then you broke up.
Sorry about that. There's the social media policy is getting consensus from the unions and going to council either next Tuesday or the following or the next meeting. So it's actually coming up pretty quickly.
Okay. So given that, should we? Chair's opinion is that let's see what the council adopts, and if there's something that we see we need to have more pertinence to our body, you know, we can probably adopt other parameters as a self-governance.
Chair, if I may, I didn't realize that was so far along. I knew it was being worked on, but I thought it was not quite that far. May I suggest, may we wait if the council is for council approval, we can share that information with the commission at appropriate time, and then maybe have a similar discussion as tonight, much shorter and, you know, more focused on that social media policy. And then if you have, in addition to the policy for the city, if you have other code of conduct items that you want to have just for the Planning Commission, we could talk about it at a future date.
Absolutely. If we can just go ahead and earmark that as a new business item, so that we can kind of keep track and have it's on the agenda at that time. Would that be possible?
Definitely. Yeah, we can do that. We'll just have it trail on the agenda. Liz and Ms. Medina and planning manager and I will track that. And then as soon as we have a decision from the council, we'll put that on new business for discussion with the planning.
Absolutely. If there's anything, as we said, you know, if there's anything that we see that is more pertinent to this body here, then we'll go ahead and formulate the appropriate 3-person quorum to a 3-person body to to set into motion the specific terms.
Okay.
Thank you. Staff, apologize for the interruptions and discussions. Are we any other items to cover on the bylaws?
I think we're done with the bylaws. We've covered most everything. There was one more slide in the presentation, but I think it was just questions and it was just prompts. If you would go to the next slide, it was just prompts for a conversation, but I think we've discussed most of these items along the way. So I guess maybe we can close with if there's anything we need to talk about these virtual meetings. Personally, I'm pleasantly surprised at how seamlessly the city, and particularly this planning commission with so many members, was able to transition over to a virtual format. In some regards, it makes it a little bit easier to hold meetings because we don't all have to go down to City Hall and find a place to park and go to the meeting. We miss seeing, of course, everyone face to face. But other than that, any comments on virtual meetings, things that you've liked or disliked, or things that we need to do differently?
Okay, since the commissioner's been so quiet throughout this evening, I'm gonna just call Commissioner C by calling their names, and if there are any comments. Commissioner Chuan, do you have any particular comments?
Regarding the virtual meetings, I feel it's been working great. I feel that, at least we continue the, forums, as long as there's public forum and there's a means for the public to, provide public comment. I think it's been, working out. I think everyone's been courteous on, virtual, the virtual format in terms of, as one of the bylaws is, everything needs to go through the chair. And so far, I think it's been working out. Sometimes there's a little bit of, contention. Maybe two people will speak at the same time, but I think at least we're going through the chair and he's been sorting it out. So just my own opinion, it's actually been, working out.
Thank you, Commissioner Chuan and Commissioner Chua.
The transition was very smooth. I think we can acknowledge, we can recognize the staff, of course, Director Thomas. It's been so seamless and it's just nice. Of course, at first we were ambivalent about doing the Zoom thing, but we got used to it, and it's very convenient, to be honest. It's very easy to prep ourselves. Like you said, we don't have to worry about if it's windy or if it's raining or here. So, and thank you very much. Like Commissioner Tuan said, everybody's been respectful. And I also want to commend Chair Tao and Vice Chair Alcorn. They're very good in conducting meetings, and really happy to be part of this group.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we appreciate the kind comments, and we're all residents of this wonderful little city, and I think we all have a same goal of striving for a better place for all of us and those around us, and those who may come here to see us. Thank you very much. And Commissioner Albana.
Yes, I wanted to add to what Evelyn was saying. I felt more comfortable being the youngest now joining the commission. When I'm at the end there, because I know I'm the newest, of course, sitting in the dais, it just makes me freeze sometimes, getting used to it. But right now, I just feel like one family and one team. And I wanted to say thank you to Miss Liz and to the IT support people, how I know they prepare and they spend a lot of time in sending us the materials. And what I like is I get reminded, like, okay, the meeting is tomorrow, the meeting is in an hour. So it's really easier for us to not to be absent, you know, and of course the commitment. That's why we're here to serve is basically like that is our commitment, is to attend the meetings and be prepared with the materials. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And Commissioner Plaza?
There it is. I have no comments at the moment. Everything is fine.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Belong?
No, I mean, I think it's with the new way of life, Zoom is just kind of the way things are nowadays. I mean, this is just another one of, well, not just another one meeting for me, but I mean, everything we do now seems it's by Zoom. And so I think the way the city adapted and got on board real quick to keep business going, I think was great. And so, you know, I don't have any complaints about it other than, you know, technical difficulties here and there, as long as we can power through them or get them corrected, you know, and, you know, I think we've all had them at times. So it's all a learning curve for everybody. And so, you know, it's great that we can still have meetings and conduct business. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And Vice Chair?
My turn for a speech. No, I'm actually really impressed with this planning commission and just kind of how quickly we, you know, just kind of changed course. I enjoy virtual meetings, although I really do like the dais. I don't know, it's probably just the young buck thing, being the young guy and being on the dais. I really enjoy it. But hats off to the IT department. You know, if you notice what we see on our Zoom screen, how we can kind of see everyone, that's not what the live stream actually shows. Because, you know, we can see all the people on the side, but they show a presentation version, and you have to go through special software and hardware to do that. And it's not easy. I've done it. It's not the easiest thing, because if something goes wrong, there's so many different points of failure. So our IT department, you know, we see you over there. We appreciate you. It's not easy work, but you guys have nailed it. I haven't seen any outages or anything crazy that's been happening. And they run the slides while doing that. They're running the slides at the same time. Yeah, so hats off to them. And also our planning staff for adapting quickly and keeping things interesting. So just everyone's just doing great. You're all just doing dandy.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair. And likewise, you know, I very much appreciated the folks behind the scenes, the IT department, and all those involved. And you know, we appreciate your help and the contribution making this thing happen. And also special thanks to Rochelle, the city manager's office. I think we all have gotten enough emails from her reminding us of the things that we have to do. And no, we appreciate the city staff from you know, conducting meetings and you know, having all the professional qualities coming through, you know, with all their work products, you know, in this sort of interesting times, to say the least. And not the least, the city attorney for keeping all of us out of Seneca County Detention Center, and we appreciate that. And you know, everything's been running smoothly, and we really appreciate, you know, this opportunity. Hopefully, in the not so distant future, that we're able to reconnect on the dais and having all of us, you know, be able to see each other in living color, and really appreciate. And again, thank you for all those for the city employees and the folks that been part of this endeavor. Thank you for your time and efforts, and we highly appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
if we're wrapping up the discussion, I do have a couple of announcements. Before you get to the end of the meeting, I do have a couple of announcements I wanted to
Please,
make.
by all means.
Oh, is now a good time?
Absolutely.
All right. One will go along with what we were just talking about. I just wanted to, I think I've mentioned this before, but just wanted to let the Planning Commission know that for larger items that are coming to you for public hearing, one of the things that we're doing as staff is we have created a space on the Planning Department webpage called Online Public Forum. And for those projects, once they're scheduled for public hearing, the Online Public Forum will list the project and the date of the hearing. And then there are links in there of a narrative description, very brief, usually just a paragraph or two of what the project is and what it entails. And then there will also be a link to a basic set of plans so that anyone who is interested, anyone in the public who is interested in that project can go and look at the plans and have an idea of what that project is. If there is a CEQA document attached to it, we also include a link to the CEQA document. So this has been, we've been using this in lieu of a community meeting, which would typically be held for a larger project or a project that has garnered a lot of community interest. So for example, in a few weeks, one of the items before you will be an infill project at the Sunny Hills residential development. And that has had a fair amount of interest from that community. We did have a community meeting in person last fall, but that has just now making its way and went through a CEQA process, and it's just now making its way to public hearing. So we've added that, it's either been added or will soon be added to Online Public Forum, and people will be able to go look at it. Similar to what we did for the community meetings when they were being held in person, we will send out postcards to the community to let them know where they can go to find this information. So those postcards typically would have the time, date, and place of the community meeting. In this case, they will have the web address that they can go to find information about the meeting and that about the project. And that has bearing on the Planning Commission meeting, because what we do is we give them the web address and we also give them a time frame in which they can submit comments by email on that project. And then we will gather those comments together and make them as part of the meeting packet that goes out to you. And that has one impact, is that you get the comments ahead of time and can read those and consider them carefully. It also cuts down on the amount of time, and sometimes it's hard for people to hear something at the public meeting and be able to put a comment together really quickly and send it in by email. So it gives plenty of advance notice to people when projects are coming to the Planning Commission and they can make comments on it. So I just wanted to let you know that's one way that we're handling additional public engagement on these projects. So the other announcements I have is tomorrow night we're having probably what will be our last meeting of the General Plan Advisory Committee. We will be reviewing with them the draft general plan and getting some final comments on that. I know that this is a conflict for some of you with the candidates forum tomorrow night. We apologize for that. There will be an opportunity for this body, the Planning Commission, to receive a similar presentation at the end of the month on September 29th. That is and you should have all received notice for that. There will be a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the City Council to review the draft general plan with the consultants and with staff. And we're very much looking forward to that meeting. This document has been 4 years in the making, and it's a general plan for the next 20 years of the future of Milpitas. So it's a very important milestone for the city. And I think it's a great opportunity. We haven't had a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the City Council for quite some time. So I'm glad that we were able to find a time that we can get together. We will try to continue doing that on at least an annual basis, if not more often. And then the last meeting that I'll mention is next Tuesday at the regular City Council meeting. As part of that agenda, the consultants for the Metro specific plan will be holding another study session with the council on that project. So this is the second of 3 meetings with the council, just kind of putting together the plan and getting direction from the council on where we'll go. That meeting will be speaking about a number of different topics, but specifically around mixed use and possible redevelopment on portions of around the Great Mall site and those areas of the trans area plan that haven't yet been developed, particularly in we call it the Tango neighborhoods, where Tarab Court and Single Court are currently. It's the one area of the transit area plan that hasn't yet fully been converted from industrial uses over to residential uses. So we're talking about mixed use, also complete streets and multimodal transportation, and then open space and parkland. So those three topics will be the focus of this meeting. And then there will be another meeting with the Metro Plan in October to talk about other topics as we move forward with that plan. But I just wanted to give you a brief update. If you're interested, please tune into that council meeting. I think it'll be a very interesting discussion.
So thank you, Director Thomas. Thank you. Director Thomas, got a question on the joint meeting on the 29th.
Yes.
That's a meeting that staff will conduct and do the presentation on. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the general plan consultants will be with us, and they will walk everyone through the plan and answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Any other questions from commissioners? Seeing none, and moving to the next agenda item, which is adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And can I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, is that Commissioner Blaza, I assume?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And do I have a consensus here?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I think I heard it. I think we have enough ayes. And thank you very much. And we appreciate everyone's time this evening. And thank you, staff, especially Director Thomas and Planning Manager at Garner, and for your time, along with all our folks in the behind the scenes. Thank you for your time this evening for the special meeting. Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Yes.